With the recent beta event for the new Elite specializations, all of us had ample time to try them out. And the Elite spec I was most excited to try out is very obvious, I think. It was the Conduit. Not because it looked the most well designed, quite the opposite. Still, it did appeal to me in many ways. However, I had my concerns. Having had my hands on it now, I feel confident enough to give my take on what's good about the Conduit, what's not so good, and what changes I'd like to see before the launch of Visions of Eternity. Because if it goes live like this, it might be the most disappointing one of the bunch, which would be a shame because the theme is excellent. Raza as a legend is brilliant. I had thought about this myself before, and I'm really glad ArenaNet is finally doing this. They work so well for the Revenant. Raza is a mysterious entity spawned into existence by the Mist. Abaddon put him away for an unknown purpose, which we never learned because we met Raza after Abaddon was already defeated. Also, in the Conduit reveal blog post, it was mentioned that they are the first and only Revenant legend who is still alive, which makes me think Raza might be coming back to the story, and it would be great to finally unravel this 2-decade-long mystery. Another thing about Raza is that they were the only hero whose primary profession could be changed in Guild Wars 1, and Conduit as an elite spec reflects that by assigning a Guild Wars 1 profession for all your legends. Shiro gets the Assassin, Felix gets the Mesmer, Jealous the Warrior, Ventari the Monk, and Raza gets the Dervish. So thematically, I think this spec is a major win because Raza just screams Revenant. Raza as a legend is also well designed. I'm purely talking about the legend, not Cosmic Wisdom. Resonance is fundamentally a good mechanic, or at least good enough. I've seen the sentiment around how every utility skill should function like the Elite, so they get some kind of benefit for each legend, but I think the resonance mechanic is fine as it is. It works well thematically, and let's be honest, it wouldn't make much sense, let's say the Warrior legend changing how Hex Eater Vortex works, as that is a Mesmer skill. The one thing that has to be mentioned here is that some of the resonance bonuses could use some work. For example, Beguiling Case should have more damage with Shiro and be a relevant DPS ability, much like how Hex Eater Vortex is on Malex. Another reason why I think the utilities on Raza and the resonance mechanic shouldn't be changed much is that Conduit needs work elsewhere. Adding extra resonance effects to Raza would only change Raza, and it wouldn't address the bigger issues with the Conduit. This is a great segue to talk about Cosmic Wisdom. Cosmic Wisdom is the base mechanic of the Conduit. It's quite simple. You generate affinity by using utility skills, also with weapon skills if you are using a certain trait, to increase the duration of Cosmic Wisdom, which gives you bonus stats and a unique on-hit effect based on your legend. But that's basically it. I have two issues here. The obvious one is that this feels a little too simple for an elite specialization mechanic. To be fair, through traits there are a couple of interesting things you can do with affinity and Cosmic Wisdom. Perpetual Wisdom being the most interesting as it turns Cosmic Wisdom into an upkeep ability. However, Cosmic Wisdom on its own is not enough, because at the end of the day it's just one button that gives you passives for X amount of time, and not particularly interesting passives at that. I feel that Conduit needs something more. One thing that could help here is if the bonus stats are completely decoupled from Cosmic Wisdom, you just have bonus stats based on the legend you are currently invoking, and the Cosmic Wisdom effects are more impactful. There is just something so off-putting about pressing a button for extra stats. There are far more interesting effects baked into traits even that are completely passive. But if the stats just came baseline with the legends, that could enable Cosmic Wisdom to have more unique effects. Right now the only effects just don't feel interesting enough. My second issue is affinity itself. Affinity generation baseline feels awful. On Raza it's not as bad, but the moment you are using a legend where you are supposed to use an upkeep ability to maximize your damage, you will end up only generating one affinity. This is where the trait Conductive Armaments comes in. This makes your weapon skills also generate affinity. With this trait, affinity generation is basically trivial. Without it, it's terrible. I was also surprised to learn that Cosmic Wisdom doesn't actually spend affinity. You just need it to increase its duration. You only lose affinity when you swap legends. If conductive armaments were to be made baseline, I think that could open up new possibilities for the Conduit, mainly by adding abilities that interact with affinity in a more active manner than Cosmic Wisdom. Even before the beta started, I knew this was something I'd like to see on the Elite spec. However, I had no idea what kind of interactions I'd like to see on these abilities. If conductive armaments was baseline, these abilities can be affinity spenders, and maybe even Cosmic Wisdom should be that too, but I'm not sure about that yet. Affinity building and then actually spending that resource might just be the layer Conduit is missing right now. In fact, this could even open up a pathway for boon support roles for the Elite spec. I had a lot of time to think about this, and I think having quickness on this wouldn't just be nice, but considering that Conduit is supposed to be a very versatile spec, it would also fit with it thematically. In fact, since Conduit is supposed to buff all your legends, there might even be room for a boon healer build using Ventari. The big question is what these F abilities should do and how they should function. Using affinity spending as a basis, and thinking arguably way too much about this, I came up with two potential profession mechanics for the Conduit. First, each legend receives 1 F3 abilities, alongside Cosmic Wisdom, so 5 new skills in total. Also, this would be another excuse to use Guild Wars 1 ability names, which the Raza utility skills are already doing. I mean, it would be even better if we had 2 or 3 active skills, but at this point that's probably too much to ask. One thing these abilities need to avoid is being passive skills, because the sole reliance on passive bonuses is the issue with the Conduit right now. There can be passive benefits attached to them, but that should not be the focal point of them. For example, currently the power build is a bit too weak, so it would make sense if the Shiro ability was a nice DPS increase. So let's say we get Mobius Strike. This skill resets the cooldown on your attack skills in Guild Wars 1. Something like this could work on Revenant as well, creating a burst combo, although it should also restore some energy in the process to actually work. To synergize with Affinity, it could give more energy back depending on how much Affinity you spend and obviously deal more damage. A fairly simple skill, but it shakes up how you normally play Shiro. I'm thinking something similar in vein for Malix as well, except with condition interactions, probably some additional confusion support in some way. And if boon support traits were to be added to the Conduit, on legends like Ventari and even Jealous, these skills could fill in some gaps in their toolkit. Raza is probably the hardest to come up with an ability for, as it has to synergize with every other legend. However, considering he has the Dervish profession, a side attack makes the most sense. There were many such abilities in Guild Wars 1, so there are plenty to choose from. Something like Wounding Strike would work well with Malix and Shiro, have some conditions on it, with decent strike damage, but that would feel redundant for the other legends, so it needs some additional effect on the ability. But that is it basically, just adding a few extra abilities that spend affinity and hopefully give new interactions to each legend, making them play a little differently, is enough to make the Conduit a little bit more interesting. While I was trying to come up with abilities for Raza, it was when a whole different way of giving new profession mechanics to the Conduit hit me. So this is the second idea. One that might even be better than my first. What if ArenaNet tried to replicate the Dervish teardown mechanic? You might be asking what teardown is. In short, in Guild Wars 1, Dervish had many enchantment effects, and some abilities removed an enchantment from the Dervish for some kind of bonus effect. With this in mind, through Cosmic Wisdom, we have 5 separate enchantment effects if you will, and the Affinity Spender abilities would have unique interactions with the removal of Cosmic Wisdom. Let's say Cosmic Wisdom is moved to the F5 slot, and from F2 to F4 we had 3 abilities that are either the same on every legend or did slightly different things based on your legend, but additionally they had an interaction that removed Cosmic Wisdom effects, and obviously, depending on which legend's Cosmic Wisdom you removed, the additional effect would be different. Considering that we have less than 2 months till the launch of Visions of Eternity, all 3 skills could have the same removal effect based on which Cosmic Wisdom you removed, so 5 removal effect and not 15. Originally I thought the teardown-like effect would only make sense for Raza, considering this is a very Dervish focused effect, But the Conduit gives you access to the other professions as well through the channeling of Raza. This means that lore-wise, it makes sense if Raza learned how to combine these disciplines over the years, and that would also reflect how Guild Wars 1 worked, because you could combine two professions at once in Guild Wars 1. As to what these three abilities could be, the sky is the limit. They can be dervish sight attacks, or maybe some kind of pure mist-related abilities, or, something that fits with the name Cosmic Wisdom. On the art for the Conduit, there is that Solar Eclipse Scepter, so maybe abilities that are themed after celestial bodies could work. Have a basic sight attack called Cosmic Sight, an ability called Eclipse, where you summon a black sun, and honestly, I also quite like the Fragments of Raza effect, so maybe one that summons one or two Echoes of Raza that perform a different attack based on your legend. And I could go on forever here. As traits go, both of these profession mechanics would mean massive reworks for the traits as well. Since quickness would be nice on the Conduit, there should be a trait that gives quickness with affinity spending. If ArenaNet wanted a healer build for the Conduit, there needs to be a trait that gives more boons with these abilities. As I mentioned before, if Conductive Armaments was baseline, that would essentially free up all adept traits. If Cosmic Wisdom was changed, some of the Master and Grandmaster traits would become redundant as well, leaving plenty of room for traits that affect the affinity spending abilities. So this is it. I tried to come up with something that fits well with the fantasy of Conduit, but frankly, ArenaNet can really do anything to expand on the profession mechanic here. But the key takeaway is this: Conductive armaments need to be made baseline, and affinity need to be a resource we actually spend on something, preferably more F abilities. This should be the starting point of any potential changes. Also, one massive improvement would be if Cosmic Wisdom just straight up had more interesting effects. I also want to reiterate one thing. Raza as a legend works fine if you ask me. Adding more resonance effects to each ability doesn't sound bad, but it would not solve the fundamental problem, which is the uninspired profession mechanic, Cosmic Wisdom. Whatever ArenaNet ends up doing, they have a lot of work ahead for the Conduit. I wish ArenaNet the best, and hopefully they got some ideas from this video. If anyone from their team for some reason happened to watch this video. But what do you think? How do you like these ideas, or would you like to see something completely different within the bounds of reason? They won't completely rework what's already there. Feel free to comment your ideas down below and on the forums. If you like the video, you know exactly what you need to do next, and that's it. Video's over.